1 week before my son's wedding, his fiancée looked me straight in the eye and said, "We don't want you embarrassing us in front of our friends." My heart broke in that moment, but I stayed silent. On the day of the ceremony, the priest refused to begin until I walked in. What happened after that left the entire church in tears. Before I go on, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love connecting with you and hearing your stories too. My name is Margaret Doyle, and I am 68 years old. I lost my husband, Patrick, more than 10 years ago, and since then, my son Michael has been my greatest joy. I raised him on my own after his father passed, doing everything I could to make sure he had a good life. I worked extra hours, skipped vacations, and saved every dollar I could just to keep him moving forward. When he finished college and started building his career, I felt like all the sacrifices were worth it. When Michael first introduced me to Sabrina, the woman he wanted to marry, I tried to be supportive. She was young, polished, and ambitious. At first, she seemed kind enough, and I thought maybe she would be good for him. But as time went on, I noticed her tone change. She brushed off my opinions, ignored me during family dinners, and treated me like I was some outdated piece of furniture in Michael's life. Still, I stayed quiet because what mattered most to me was Michael's happiness. As the wedding day grew closer, I tried to keep a low profile. I knew this was their day, not mine, and I only hoped to be there to watch my son take his vows. I dreamed of seeing him at the altar, standing tall, looking into the eyes of the woman he loved. That was all I wanted, to share that moment as his mother. But deep inside, I could feel a tension building. Sabrina was controlling everything about the wedding, the colors, the guest list, the music. She wanted perfection, or at least her idea of it, and I could tell she didn't see me as part of that picture. I told myself I could endure her coldness because I didn't want to create conflict, but I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. It was exactly 1 week before the wedding when Sabrina showed me her true feelings without even trying to hide them. She came over to my house, dressed in her usual perfectly pressed blouse and skirt, her nails painted bright red, her smile sharp and practiced. I thought she was there to discuss something about the wedding, maybe a detail Michael had asked her to share. Instead, she sat on my couch like she owned the place and got straight to the point. "We don't want you embarrassing us in front of our friends," she said, her voice calm. At first, I thought I had misheard her. "Excuse me?" I asked, my hands tightening around the cup of tea I had just poured for. "You don't fit the image we're going for," she continued, her tone sharper now. "This wedding is about elegance and class. No offense, but your presence doesn't match that." Her words stung like a slap to the face. I blinked, trying to process what she had just said. "Embarrass you? How could I possibly embarrass you? I am Michael's mother. I raised him. I've done nothing but support him." She sighed, as if I were a child who just didn't understand. "You don't get it. This is going to be the biggest day of our lives. All of Michael's colleagues will be there, my friends from college, people who know what a wedding should look like. We can't afford any slip-ups." I sat there in silence for a moment, my heart aching. I wasn't asking to give a speech. I wasn't asking to be in the spotlight. I just wanted to see my son get married. "Sabrina," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice from shaking, "do you really mean to tell me you don't want me at my own son's wedding?" She crossed her arms and tilted her head, unbothered. "It's better if you don't come. Think of it as saving us both from unnecessary drama." I felt my chest tighten. For a moment, I thought I might cry right in front of her, but I swallowed hard and held it in. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I nodded slowly. "If that's what you want," I whispered, though inside my heart was breaking. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet of my house, staring at the empty teacup she hadn't even touched. The silence pressed down on me until tears finally spilled down my cheeks. How could she say that to me? After everything I had done for Michael, after all the years I had stood by him, how could the woman he chose to marry decide I wasn't good enough to be present on his wedding day? Later that evening, I called Michael. My voice trembled as I told him what had happened. I expected him to be furious with her, to stand up for me immediately, but instead, he sighed heavily and said, "Mom, please don't cause trouble. Sabrina is stressed. This wedding has been overwhelming. I just want the day to go smoothly." I froze. "Michael, she told me not to come. She told me I would embarrass you." "I didn't say that," he answered quickly. "I just think maybe you could sit this one out if it makes her less anxious. I'll explain it to the guests. We'll celebrate together afterward." His words hurt worse than Sabrina's because they came from my own son, my own flesh and blood. I felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath me. "Michael," I said, my voice breaking, "do you even hear yourself? You're asking your own mother to miss the most important day of your life." There was a long silence. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, please, don't make this harder." And with that, the call ended. I sat there, clutching the phone to my chest, tears rolling down my face. I had never felt so unwanted, so dismissed, so small. The one thing I had looked forward to since he first told me he was getting married was being taken away from me. All the nights I had prayed for his happiness, all the sacrifices I had made when he was growing up, it was as if none of it mattered now. For days after, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house in silence, my mind replaying Sabrina's words over and over. "You don't fit the image. You don't match that." I looked at myself in the mirror and wondered if maybe she was right. My hair had more gray than brown now. My hands showed the years of work I had done. My clothes were simple. Maybe in her eyes, I was a flaw in her picture-perfect wedding. But deep down, another voice whispered that it wasn't about looks or appearances. It was about respect, and the lack of it cut deeper than anything else. I knew I couldn't let her erase me from my son's life so easily. Something inside me told me this wasn't the end of the story. The days following Sabrina's visit felt like a heavy fog. I went through my routines, watering the plants, making breakfast, folding laundry, but everything felt empty. Each time I thought about the wedding, my chest tightened. I imagined the church filled with flowers, the guests dressed in their best clothes, and Michael standing at the altar. But in my mind, I was always outside, barred from the moment I had been waiting for my whole life. At night, I would sit in the living room staring at the framed photos on the wall, pictures of Michael at his high school graduation, his college ceremony, his first job interview, and countless birthday parties. In every one of them, I had been there, cheering for him, holding him, or standing proudly at his side. Now, just when my heart longed to witness the moment he began his own family, I was being told I wasn't wanted. It was on one of those nights, as I sat with tears in my eyes, that I found myself whispering to Patrick's photograph. "What should I do?" I asked. My husband had always been my strength. He used to tell me, "Maggie, you don't need to be loud to be strong. Quiet dignity speaks louder than shouting." Those words came back to me, clearer than ever, and something inside me shifted. I realized I could not let Sabrina erase me from this milestone. I was Michael's mother. I had earned my place at his wedding through years of sacrifice and love. If Sabrina couldn't see that, then that was her blindness, not mine. The following morning, I rose with a new sense of resolve. I wasn't going to fight Sabrina, nor would I beg Michael to defend me. I decided I would walk into that church with my head held high and let my presence speak for itself. If they wanted to ignore me, so be it, but I would not exclude myself from my son's wedding. Over the next few days, I prepared quietly. I went shopping for a dress that made me feel elegant without being flashy. I found a deep navy gown with lace sleeves, simple, tasteful, and dignified. When I tried it on, I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in weeks, I saw myself again. Not as the unwanted guest Sabrina tried to make me feel like, but as Michael's mother, the woman who raised him and loved him unconditionally. I also called Father Thomas, the priest who would be officiating. He had known our family for years, since Michael was a boy. With a trembling voice, I explained what Sabrina had said to me. Father Thomas was silent for a moment, and then he spoke firmly. "Margaret, no wedding should take place without the presence of the parents who raised the bride and groom. If you are not there, it will not be right. Trust me, we will make this right." His words filled me with courage. I wasn't alone. Someone else understood the value of my presence. When the morning of the wedding finally arrived, my heart pounded with both fear and determination. I slipped into the navy dress, pinned on the pearl brooch Patrick had given me on our 25th anniversary, and took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was not broken, not cast aside. She was a mother who had given everything for her son, and she would be there to see him take his vows, no matter what. As I walked toward the church, I prepared myself for cold glances, whispers, maybe even confrontation, but I reminded myself that I wasn't going for Sabrina or even for the guests. I was going for Michael and for myself. I didn't march in loudly or make a scene. I walked with quiet dignity and slipped into a seat at the back pew. From there, I could see the altar, the flowers, the guests gathering. My hands trembled slightly, but inside I felt calm. I knew I had made the right choice. And what I didn't know at that moment was that Father Thomas had already decided the wedding would not begin until I was seated in the place where I truly belonged. The church was buzzing with chatter as guests filled the pews, admiring the decorations and whispering about how beautiful the ceremony was going to be. I sat quietly at the very back, my hands folded in my lap, hoping no one would notice me. My heart beat so fast it felt like it might burst. Part of me wondered if I had made a mistake. Perhaps Sabrina would cause a scene if she saw me. Perhaps Michael would look disappointed, as if I had ruined his day. But then the music began to play softly, signaling that the ceremony was about to start. Everyone hushed, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. I leaned forward slightly, straining to see my son at the altar. There he was, my Michael, standing tall in his suit, looking nervous but handsome. For a moment, all the fear melted away. That was my boy, the same little child who once held my hand on his first day of school, the same young man I stayed up late helping with homework, the same son who used to kiss my cheek before bed. My eyes filled with tears. No matter what happened, I was glad I had. Then, Father Thomas stepped up to the altar. He adjusted his glasses and looked out at the congregation. He glanced at Michael, then at the bridal party waiting near the front. Sabrina stood there in her white gown, smiling proudly at her guests, basking in the admiration. Her eyes never wandered toward me. It was as if I didn't exist. Father Thomas cleared his throat. His voice rang out, firm and clear. Before we begin this ceremony, I must ask a question. Everyone looked around, confused. The music stopped. The room grew tense. Father Thomas's eyes swept the room, and then to my shock, they landed on me. "Where is the mother of the groom?" he asked. His voice carried through the church like a bell. Whispers broke out among the guests. People turned in their seats, their eyes scanning the pews until they settled on me, sitting quietly in the back. My cheeks burned as dozens of eyes fixed on me. I wanted to shrink into the bench, but Father Thomas wasn't finished. "This ceremony will not begin until Mrs. Margaret Doyle is seated in her rightful place," he declared. "A wedding cannot be blessed without honoring the parents who gave us the bride and groom, especially the mother who raised this man with her own hands and heart." Gasps echoed across the room. Sabrina's face turned pale, and her smile faltered. She glanced nervously at Michael, who looked stunned, his mouth opening but no words coming out. I froze, my body trembling. I had not expected this. I thought I would simply sit quietly, unnoticed, at the back. But Father Thomas had stopped the entire wedding for me. A woman sitting beside me touched my arm gently. "Go on, dear," she whispered. "You deserve to be up there." Slowly, with my legs shaking, I stood. The whispers grew louder as I walked down the aisle, my heels clicking softly against the church floor. Each step felt heavy, but also freeing. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to let Sabrina's glare stop me. When I reached the front, an usher hurriedly pulled out a chair in the first row. As I sat down, Michael turned toward me. His eyes were wet, his face crumpling with emotion. "Mom?" he mouthed silently, his voice caught in his throat. Tears filled my own eyes, and I gave him a small nod, letting him know I was all right. Father Thomas waited until I was settled. Then he spoke again, this time softer, but with deep conviction. "Now that the mother of the groom is here, we may begin. For without her, we would not have this man standing before us today." The weight of his words filled the church. Guests wiped their eyes. A few people even clapped quietly, though quickly silenced themselves in respect for the ceremony. I glanced at Sabrina. Her jaw was tight, her lips pressed into a thin line, but there was nothing she could do. In that moment, the priest's authority and the truth of his words had shattered her attempt to erase me. As the ceremony resumed, I sat in the front row, my heart bursting with both sorrow and pride. I had been humiliated, cast aside, and nearly erased. But here I was, honored in front of everyone. My presence had not only been acknowledged, it had been defended. When Michael turned back toward the altar, his shoulders seemed to relax. He took Sabrina's hands, but his eyes flickered to me once more. Tears slipped down his cheeks, and I knew those were not just wedding tears. They were tears of guilt, of love, and of a son realizing what he had almost lost. The priest's words had done what I could not. They reminded everyone, including Michael, that I was not a burden or an embarrassment. I was his mother, and nothing could ever change that. For the rest of the ceremony, I sat quietly, tears flowing freely, but my head held high. This was my son's wedding, and I was where I belonged. When the ceremony ended and the organ began to play, the church erupted into applause. The guests rose from their seats, smiling, wiping away tears, and whispering about the moment they had just witnessed. I sat still for a moment, overwhelmed, my hands pressed together in my lap. It felt like I had lived through a storm, battered and shaken, but still standing. As the bridal party walked back down the aisle, Michael paused near me. His eyes were red from tears, but there was something different in his expression now. For the first time in a long while, he looked at me, not with hesitation or distance, but with pure love. He leaned close and whispered, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should never have let her treat you that way." His voice cracked, and he blinked back more tears. I squeezed his hand and said softly, "You're my son. That's all that matters. I'll always be here for you." When we stepped outside the church, the autumn air was crisp and cool. Guests came up to me one after another, offering hugs and words of kindness. "That was the most powerful moment I've ever seen at a wedding," one woman said, tears still shining in her eyes. Another man told me, "The priest was right. You deserved to be honored." Each kind word chipped away at the hurt Sabrina had tried to inflict on me. For so long, I had felt invisible in her presence, like an outsider in my own son's life. But in that moment, I realized something important. I was not invisible. People saw me, respected me, and recognized the sacrifices I had made for Michael. At the reception, the atmosphere was lively with music, laughter, and clinking glasses. I kept to my seat for most of the evening, content to watch Michael and Sabrina dance their first dance as husband and wife. I couldn't deny that Sabrina looked beautiful, but the smugness she once wore seemed dimmed. She glanced at me several times throughout the night, her eyes unreadable. Perhaps she was angry, perhaps embarrassed, or maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to understand that trying to erase me had backfired in front of everyone. Jacob, one of Michael's young cousins, came running up to me with a wide smile. "Aunt Margaret, you looked so pretty in the front row. I saw you crying. Were you happy?" His innocent question nearly undid me. I knelt down, hugged him, and said, "Yes, sweetheart, I was very happy. Sometimes tears come when your heart is full." Later in the evening, Father Thomas approached me. His presence was calm and grounding, as always. "You carried yourself with grace today, Margaret," he said. "I only did what was right. A mother's place is never at the back." I felt tears rise again, but this time they were warm and healing. "Thank you, Father," I whispered. "You gave me back my dignity." As the night wore on, Michael found his way back to me once more. He sat beside me, his hand covering mine. "I know I let you down," he admitted quietly, "but I promise, this will never happen again. You'll always be part of my life, no matter what." Hearing those words from my son filled the hollow place that Sabrina's cruelty had carved inside me. It reminded me that love, though sometimes clouded or delayed, will always find its way through. In the days that followed, people in town continued to talk about the wedding. not about the flowers, or the music, or even Sabrina's dress. They talked about the moment the priest refused to start without me, about the tears that filled the church, and about how powerful it was to see a mother take her rightful place. I realized then that sometimes the most important moments are not planned, but born out of truth and courage. As for Sabrina, she remained polite but distant whenever we saw each other. I didn't expect her to change overnight, but she never tried to exclude me from family gatherings again, and that was enough for me. I didn't need her approval. I had already been reminded that my worth didn't depend on her acceptance. The lesson I carried from that day was simple but profound. Never let anyone convince you that you are less than what you are. Age, status, appearance, none of these diminish the sacrifices, the love, and the presence you bring into your family's life. Respect may be denied by some, but it will always shine through in the moments that matter most. Looking back, I know Sabrina thought she was protecting her image by pushing me aside, but in reality, she gave me a chance to stand taller than I ever had before. And when the priest demanded my presence, when my son looked at me with tears in his eyes, I knew the truth. I was not the embarrassment. I was the heart. That wedding day changed me forever. It reminded me that dignity is not something others grant. It is something you claim. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love connecting with each of you and hearing your own stories.